Have you ever wondered why some people seem to perform better under pressure, like they perform better in the clutch, whereas other people seem to collapse under pressure? And they're really good in practice, but when the situation arises, they simply can't rise up to the expectations. Well, that's something that I've been reading about a lot and thinking about. And a lot of what I'm going to share in this video is from the book Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. And this is something that really helped me, so I wanted to share it with you. So hopefully you can actually gain something from this video and learn about how to deal with high pressure situations, how to perform well under pressure. And it really comes down to three things that I'm going to discuss. The first thing is being able to practice without pressure. The second thing is to keep your positive goal in mind. And the third thing is to not make a mountain out of a molehill. And we'll get more into it as we go on. But let's start with the first thing, which is about practicing under pressure. So, as human beings, we simply don't learn well under crisis. We can learn fast, but we don't learn well. And the analogy to think about here is when someone's learning to swim, right? If you wanted to learn how to swim, if you threw them into the water, right? If you just threw them into the pool, they would learn how to swim, sure. And they learn to swim fast, but they'll just learn enough to survive. They'll learn how to like doggy paddle up to the shore. And I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but like, for example, my sister learned how to swim like this. Essentially, someone essentially pushed her into a pool and she had to like figure out how to get back. And, she learned how to do it, but she didn't learn how to swim. She learned how to survive in the water, right? And that's different. Like if you throw a man into the pool, they can learn how to survive, but they will never learn how to become a world championship swimmer. And the thing is, practicing under no pressure is what allows you to perform well under pressure. And the reason I say that is because someone actually did an experiment on this with rats, okay? And I'm reading my notes here. Rats who were able to explore a maze, right? So there's a maze and there's like a, like those like games where like there's like a marble and there's like, all the things. Basically, rats are going through one of those mazes and there's food at some point in the maze and they have to try to find it, okay? But the rats who were able to explore the maze under no pressure, they don't appear to have learned. But when they're hungry, when they have the pressure, they can quickly navigate it to find the food because they know the ins and outs of the maze. However, the rats who learn the maze while they're hungry, so they're starved for like 12 or 36 hours, they only learned one route towards the food. And if they're wrong on that one route, and if it's blocked, then they literally cannot find the food, which is so interesting, right? It's almost as if having the pressure blocks your ability to learn, and the more intense the pressure, the less you learn. The researchers studied this by starving the rats for different amounts of times, and the ones who were starved the longest were able to learn the least, right? So essentially, this is the rationale on why we have fire drills, right? Because if you're able to learn something under a low pressure scenario, you'll be able to navigate it perfectly fine in the high pressure situation. As annoying as fire drills are, the fire drills, the point of them is for them so that you can learn to navigate how everyone can evacuate a building in a low pressure situation, such that when an actual fire occurs, people will be able to figure it out. If we didn't have a fire drill, everyone would be panicking and there would be no way in hell that people would be able to evacuate. And even if some people did manage to evacuate, they would only learn to do it. They would learn it like just to survive, right? They wouldn't be able to you wouldn't be able to improvise. That's the thing that I was missing. If you try to learn under crisis, you're not able to improvise. You're just able to do it as fast as possible, and you're not able to actually improvise and like learn the nuances of whatever it is you're learning. So how do you practice under pressure? What's the actionable step that you can take? And we can actually take something from the boxing world. So in boxing, right, it's not necessarily beneficial to practice real boxing, right? Because boxing is a high pressure situation. You can get seriously hurt. So what a lot of fighters do is that they shadow box, right? So they visualize their opponent in their mind and they shadow box and like they anticipate all the different moves and reactions that their opponent is going to have, and they will literally react to it in real time. So this is a form of visualization. And they shadow box so many times that eventually in the real situation, they rely on their muscle memory to be able to react to these super high pressure, fast situations. And the thing is, this can apply not just to boxing. This applies to everything. This applies to sports. This applies to taking tests. This applies to social situations. How many times have you been in a social situation and you're in the moment and you like completely blank, your mind is blank, but then you leave the social situation, you go back home, and suddenly you think of all these wonderful things that you could have said. That happens to me all the time. And the reason this happens is because when you have too much tension, you have too much motivation, too much anxiety, these emotions jam your subconscious mind such that you can't think on the fly. Thinking on the fly is literally your subconscious mind just going off. But having too much emotion will jam your subconscious and you literally cannot react. And that's why you get, like later on, you'll be like, when there's no pressure, you start thinking of all the things that you could have said. So that's the first thing. Literally, you could shadow box anything in your life and it will help you practice without the pressure. And that's just step one. Step two is like being able to elevate yourself under pressure, right? You notice that like in clutch players in sports, right? Not only do they just perform under pressure, they get additional powers. It's almost like they're like become superhuman in the times of crisis. So these are the people who like in practice, they score X and then in the real thing, they always do better. And this is something that I've actually noticed happens to me as well, specifically in the domain of test taking. I would always do better on the real exam than I would do in my practice exams. And it's because something unlocked during the actual exam that the pressure gave me additional powers. And what this really comes down to, and this is from Maxwell Maltz, is crisis can bring power when you fearlessly accept the challenge and confidently expend your strength. In summary, what you need to do is have a goal-directed attitude as opposed to a defensive attitude. What does that mean? A goal-directed attitude is no matter what happens, I will achieve my goal. And a defensive attitude is, oh man, I hope nothing bad happens, right? And there's this famous guy named Prescott Leckie. And he had this idea that the purpose of emotion is reinforcement. And he had this idea that there's only really one emotion of excitement. And this excitement will add strength to whatever our inner goal is at the time. So if you stay goal oriented, your emotion will give you courage and strength. But if you're evasive, then this excitement will give you fear and anxiety in line with your inner goals. And the idea is that like before you're about to go into a high pressure situation, you have this feeling of like nerves, right? You have like, you don't know whether it's excitement or nervousness. Like you ever have that feeling? Because I get it all the time right before a high pressure situation. That is strength that you can use in any way that you so choose. It can either help you become stronger and it can give you more courage if you have the inner goal that's goal directed, if you're thinking about the goal, or if you're thinking, oh, I hope nothing goes wrong, it adds to the fear and the anxiety that you feel. So that energy is something that you can choose in the way you can choose how you want to use it. So it can either help you or hurt you. So if you keep your inner goals in mind, right? If you have a goal directed attitude, you can use that energy to strengthen you as opposed to hurting you. That's number two. And the third and final point is don't make a mountain out of a molehill. I would like you to seriously consider what is the worst thing that could happen. We always imagine the worst possible failure scenario, right? We always tend to imagine things as life or death, right? Even though they're not, right? And I'm sure like the reason why is because evolutionarily, right? Even something like a social situation was life or death back when we were cavemen, right? When we were cavemen, right? If we were excluded from the social circle, that meant life or death because then the dinosaur would eat us and we wouldn't have anyone helping us in our corner. So it was a life or death situation. So I understand why you feel this way. But in reality, in our modern day and age, not a lot of things are life and death. So I want you to seriously consider what the worst case scenario is. And even in the worst case scenario, you'll still be okay. You'll still be alive and well. And if you really think about it, most crisis situations are opportunities to either advance where you are in life or stay where you are. For example, if you're applying for a job, right? The worst case scenario is that you don't get the job and you're exactly where you were before you applied for it, right? And if you get the job, then great, now you have the job. Or let's say you're like asking out a girl. That's something that a lot of people get nervous about, right? The worst case scenario is that she says no, and you're exactly where you started when you didn't ask out the girl. The best case scenario is, oh, now you have a girlfriend. It's literally, the worst case scenario is never as bad as you think it is. And I like to say this thing that everything will always be okay. And even when it's not, it will still be okay. Everything will honestly, truly be okay. So if you keep this in mind, you'll realize that you don't need to make a mountain out of a molehill. And this will remove a lot of the pressure in the high pressure situations. Now, if you do the three things combined, right? If you're able to practice without the pressure, if you're shadowboxing your mind, if you're able to keep a goal directed attitude in the high pressure situation, and you realize that the worst case scenario isn't actually that bad, you have everything to gain and nothing to lose, you will be able to be the kind of person who performs better under pressure and not collapse under pressure. Anyway, hope this helps because it helps me a lot, and I'll see you next time.